plays, but if you need to jump off, we understand. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is a place where, Amy, thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
So great to see you again.
Good to see you.
We are doing great on our time frame, and I would like to bring something back into this construct that we didn't get to do in our last two. So this will be a 10-minute break time, but I'd like you to maybe have your sound on in the background and listen to a story from one of our ODE specialists, Lauren Dressen. I'm just going to do a quick sound check on my side here really quick if I could. Okay, I've got it working here for me, so I'll be able to put this up for everyone. Would you mind putting the link in the chat, Beth? And then when we'll do kind of a 10-minute timer. Lauren is our CTE data analyst, and I think this is going to be exciting to listen to because it should really kickstart the conversation that's coming up right after this. We're going to have three of our coordinators lead a discussion around equity and using data that we can get from these exercises on our students' aptitudes, and how do we then use it in rolling out career exploration with them. It's a 10-minute video. It's just audio. Lauren had a chance to record it. I'm going to tell you she's the CTE data analyst, and I'm just going to say we're going to go to a 10-minute break. I'm going to check to make sure that the sound is working. When this audio finishes, we'll come back together and wrap up our next hour together. And really, I think the purposes and outcomes of this are really going to be evident after you hear Lauren's story. So sorry that she couldn't be here personally to join us, but really excited to share this with you. So I'm going to transfer over to this play, and let me get everything lined up. It'll just be a second. I have to talk out loud because that's how my brain processes. You should see a YouTube video. Thumbs up from anybody. Okay, and I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to share sound.
That I can't.
Let's do that. Do I have sound now?
Hello, good afternoon.
Okay, 10 minutes starts now.
I want to first apologize that I can't be here in person, I guess, or I can't be live. For many of you who do not know me, my name is Lauren Dressen, and I am currently the Secondary Career and Technical Education Data Analyst with the Oregon Department of Education. And Beth and Jim both asked me to be here to talk a little bit about the work that I do, and I guess my philosophy around how to utilize data in a productive way. And so I want to just first kind of ask a couple of questions just to get everybody thinking. So I want to first ask, when we're thinking about the aptitude tests that students will have access to as part of the YouScience pilot project, how does this opportunity for students help shape their future? How does data assist in students' understanding of their own aptitude? And how can data be harmful to students? So I want to share a personal anecdote about my experience as a student and my experience particularly with math. I started out elementary school having a lot of aptitude for math and really enjoying math, and always being, the first one to raise my hand to answer a question in math class. When I got to middle school, my middle school was kind of unique in that it was 5th through 8th grade. And so when I entered middle school in 5th grade, I had a teacher who didn't seem to be so thrilled to be a teacher anymore. She was at the end of her career. And in that class, we would all be asked to do problems up at the board, and we could sit down when we finished our problems that had been put on the board for us. That style of teaching didn't work for me, and so when I was up at the board, having all of my classmates staring at me as I'm trying to figure out how to do math, all of a sudden changed that excitement about math and started to cause me anxiety about math. And so I would spend a whole class period standing up at the board because I couldn't finish my math problem, even though I knew it. But I then went on to 6th grade, and I had a teacher that I remember when I asked a question. I don't remember what the problem was, or what I wasn't understanding, but my teacher responded that it didn't really matter because girls did not need to know math, and that has stuck with me since then. And so those two experiences back to back really changed my trajectory from going from a student who really enjoyed and had natural aptitude towards math, and it was something that made sense to me, very logical and linear. And so I had a great math teacher that followed my class from 7th grade all the way through 10th grade, and he was fabulous. But I really think at that point the damage had been done. And so as soon as I was able to stop taking math in high school, I said, I'm done. I met my requirement, and I didn't take any more math in high school. And so when I went to go off to college, and I had to take my math entrance exam to see where I was, I tested into Math 60 and had to take 5 math courses prior to making it to college algebra. So I had fallen very far in my understanding of math. And part of that was choosing to not take any more math classes because of the experiences that I had had. So I finally made it to Math 111, and it was the gatekeeper course for me to get into the University of Oregon. I had taken 2 years of community college prior to going off to university, and I failed college algebra, and that there was a good portion of time where I considered dropping out of college because I couldn't do the math. I had convinced myself that I could not do this math. And so that put me about a year behind in college. It ended up taking me a little over 5 years to graduate college, which was not the original plan. And so I enrolled in U of O regardless, and I ended up taking college algebra there, had a fabulous teacher who helped undo a lot of the damage that had been done prior to that, and made a huge difference for me. And then I took a statistics class, and it was like all that excitement of learning math, and that elementary school student in me who had loved math and had aptitude. It was like all of a sudden I'm back and I'm understanding this math, and not only that, but it felt applicable to me, and I felt like I was successful in that. And so that kind of clicked everything clicked for me at that point. And so what's so interesting is I remember having a conversation with my first college algebra teacher, and I said, I barely didn't pass the class. I mean, like 1%. And I said, can I do anything? Can I retake a test? Can I do extra credit? Can I write a paper? And I remember saying to him, I will never do math for a living. So this is the gatekeeper. I'm never going to do math for a living. I wanted to be a journalist, so it didn't matter if I was, could solve algebraic formulas. And I remember he said to me that he couldn't do that. And I'm so grateful that he didn't, because here I am, 8 years out from graduating college, and I do math for a living. And I obviously never thought I would end up here. And I am grateful for the teachers that I had in those last few years of college who helped me gain my confidence back. But I think back to those experiences as a 5th and 6th grader, and I think about how that changed my trajectory, how I shied away from math after that because of a couple bad experiences. And so as I'm thinking about these aptitude tests that these students are going to be taking, and the responsibility of the adults around them to talk to them about the information that comes out of these aptitude tests, it's so important. There is a lot of responsibility associated with that. And I think about where would I be, or how would my trajectory have been different if my teachers in those times when I was not understanding the math, in 6th grade when I was not understanding the math and I asked my teacher for help, instead of saying that girls didn't need to know math, if he had said, hey, have you thought about doing it this way? Or if he had talked to me about great female mathematicians, or had brought in another teacher who looked like me that you know, was great at math. And I just think about, how, you know, he could have shown me statistics and said, you know what, at the time, this is, you know, around 2000 or so that this happened, 30% of women roughly made up the workforce for computer and mathematical fields at that time. And how I could have gone, okay, I can do this. But instead, the rhetoric was that women didn't need to know how to do math. Girls didn't need to know how to do math. And so that stuck with me. And so I guess with that anecdote in mind, and my career as a data analyst is to really think about how to use data as a tool to encourage students and talk about it in a positive way. And not as a way to show, well, there's only, you know, only 10% of people in this field are female, or only 15% are male. How do we talk about their aptitudes and their interests in a way that is encouraging to them, and utilizing data to support them in those decisions? And so I leave you with that anecdote as you're thinking about rolling out this pilot project, and you're thinking about the conversations you'll be having with your students. Middle school is such a cool age where they're starting to think about what their future looks like, and it is our responsibility to encourage them to pursue what is right for them and help them find the tools to get to those goals. So I thank you so much for your time. And I apologize for not being able to be here live and in person. And if you have any questions or want to chat or whatever, please reach out to Beth or Jim, and they will pass along my contact information. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for listening to that during the break. And if you didn't get a chance to, you have that link to the YouTube conversation with Lauren, and she is going to work with Beth and myself in making a little lesson plan, one for kids and also for adults. Really glad that we had a chance to play that for you, and hopefully that will be a little bit of this heart-filling part of what we're going to go into now with the conversation around equity. As I was listening, I was thinking of one of my dearest friends and mentors in education, administrator at a middle school level, who constantly advocates for helping kids learn to tell their story and build the building blocks around that storytelling and thinking of what their life is going to look like and feel like as they move through education. So with that in mind, we're going to turn to Regina Childs, who is at High Desert ESD, and take it away.
Okay, yeah. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Jim said I'm Regina. I'm working at the High Desert ESD in Central Oregon. And I guess I'm kicking off the equity and accessibility discussion. And I think we didn't listen to this Lauren video, YouTube speech these last 2 times. So she addresses a lot of topics we actually would love to address here. And really, what do we want the students to experience to be? She had a lot of good points in there around mathematics education. To all transparency, I was a high school math teacher, and I had many students like her. I call them damaged by math, unfortunately. And I even stopped talking to people what my profession was for a long time, because I always heard I hated mathematics or they loved mathematics, and this would be a research study within itself, I think, just going to counters and talking to people about math education. However, as we speak this, I think she raised several topics we want to discuss here too. And please see this next session here. Carla will present from Southern ESD, and also Brooke, my supervisor and boss from the High Desert ESD, will be part of this conversation as well as we move forward here. So this is all about hearing from you. It's not us presenting about equity and accessibility. You all know your district the best and your students, populations you work with. So Jim, you can go to the next slide. There are some of the topics. You will see some bullets. So Lauren definitely touched on the first bullet. Absolutely. How has she experienced the strength-based versus the deficit-based language around how she was advised and talked to in her schools. Then also the implicit bias was totally in her conversation, and what do results or reports tell us? Being really mindful about the data used. How do we report this out to our students? What is our lens? Going back to bullet 2. And then the other one, she didn't touch so much towards, but the limitation about what the data we will see, and ELL and disabilities. So I would really like to open this up as you read through this, to enter in the chat, stop your mute, and just share out what do you see? What are your initial, when you saw the presentation this last hour, what are your thoughts? What went you through your mind listening to Lauren and the presentation? Padlet is also available. Jim Lee left that. Any thoughts, ideas? I give you some thinking time.
I think that I was, I agree, this is Brian. I think I was surprised by the fact of such an archaic idea still being around, you know, in the early 2000s, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised.
It's a fact. I had parents in my parent-teacher conferences. Actually, parents were saying that to me. It's a girl, she doesn't need to know math. And that is 7, 8 years ago, 9 years ago.
It reminds me of some former health and wellness work where how many people were scarred by bad PE experiences and decided they just couldn't exercise for the rest of their lives. Teachers have a lot of power with our young kids.
Thank you, Jessie. Yep. Just think about that when you see the data coming out. Who will be? I mean, it's not an aptitude test, but some talents might not. You know, there's a talent test. So do kids have an inborn talent? That's what it comes down to. Something they haven't discovered. But how do we say this to the kids? How do we present the data? There's definitely, you have to be mindful about how do you present it too. Hopefully something comes out with Lauren, for instance, to say, oh, look, your aptitude shows you're good in mathematics, you are good in the sciences, you are good in these fields. Kids might have not even considered it, but they see an aptitude in that. But if it's not there, do we say, well, because it's not there, we are not addressing this? But we cannot get around and say, well, you still need to take mathematics in high school. We don't get around that, or science, or English. Someone could have said the same argument as Lauren presented about writing. There are some kids that hate writing or reading. I know a lot of people, they don't like to read.
Regina, I think you make a really good point here, and we have to remember words like holistic. So this is a great tool, but it's just one tool, and you know, it doesn't become the child's identity, just like the hurtful comments from the teacher, you know, became Lauren's identity. So it's a masterful tool in our toolbox, and it's up to the adults in the room to figure out the best time, when, how. And then also, once we share this information with students, it's like everything else we do, we have to provide the support so they can explore and experience and move forward once they get this information.
Thank you, Margaret. Yep, exactly. It's a snapshot. Most schools will definitely, hopefully, offer this test again in high school. But thank you, ma'am. Exactly, it's a snapshot in time, like any other test. Adam left a message here. I think we want to frame the conversation as we want as many doors open as possible. Focus on the positive. Look at all these options you have. What you choose to do someday is just that, what you do, not who you are. Adam, would you want to expand on that? Beth, did you want to say something?
Yes, I was just waiting for Adam if you want to
Yeah,
say.
maybe he will.
Sorry about that. I tore into it and forgot to unmute my computer. I think about my own experience, which a lot of people have some pretty poignant ones today because that's what we know is our own lives. No one ever asked me what I wanted to do with my life. And that included like into my first 3 years of college. And so for someone to get to be 20, 21 years old and never even have that question posed, it takes a lot of time to wade through that mess and think about what could I do, what I want to do, what am I really apt to do based on my skills. And so the earliest you can start that conversation, I don't know how many times you guys change majors or change careers or change jobs. It's going to happen. And you want to allow time for exploration and change. And that's good. Like the most interesting people I know at 50, 60, or 70 aren't really sure what they want to do with their lives yet. And it's just the start of a conversation. That just because you take an aptitude test in the 7th grade, it says you're really, really good at social sciences doesn't mean you have to be a psychologist. It's just an idea at that time to start a conversation and hopefully open up more and more conversations. But I just know I'm shocked that no one ever asked me what I wanted to do until I was a junior in college. Like it just never came up. No one asked.
Yeah. It's planting seeds. I always said it's planting seeds with things. And that part of the whole thing, I love this, bringing it down to middle schools, because high school's supposed to be, not college, should not be the opportunity where you first explore ideas. Then it gets too expensive. There's money involved. So they can explore themselves in high school already. Give them, if you don't have certain things, look what experience you can have outside the school. Beth.
I think what I like about this too is the fact that it is a structured way of helping kids do self-reflection and relate it to data and real world situations too. I think that frequently kids are just like, oh, do this assignment for this class. And they don't get an opportunity to reflect other than maybe looking at their grades. And I firmly believe that most of the time grades are really an assessment of a teacher's performance and not a student's. And so students end up making decisions based on what other people are telling them and not given an opportunity to really reflect about what's important to them and identify what are important skills and goals for their own future. I do like the fact that it relates it to employment trends and what's available out there, because you have to scaffold that whole process of meeting those goals for students as well too. So I like the fact that there's a lot of pieces of information in there.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Adam, for sharing. Thank you for speaking up. However, as we move forward and we will have some more conversations, since the conversation continues about data use and students and equity and access, we have some more slides around this. But keep in mind really this implicit bias and stereotypes we all carry, we have to be really mindful about and hold a mirror up as educators or school employees. What messages do we send to kids? And also what hasn't brought up now, I mean, it's not bullet, but last time someone picked up on the limitations for English language learners about a test taking like that. They might have talents, but they cannot read the words. They don't understand the words. And by all means, I can really relate to this big time. And then students on IEPs with disabilities, how do they enter the test? How do we communicate to them? They have an aptitude, but through their disability, they might not be able even to pursue this career. So I had a student on, he was severely, I don't know how to say it, but he was in a wheelchair. He participated in everything in the class, but certain careers, even if he would have the aptitude, he could not do it. He just couldn't do it because his body wouldn't let him do it, but his mind, maybe, his talents. So how do we talk to kids around this? And so this test is at this point is not available in the second language, so you have someone to translate, and that's something we have to be careful as well. Through translation, something always gets lost. So how do we explain this to kids in ELL? I have some here. There's some chat language going on. How do we support English language learner and students on IEP to best experience this opportunity? So these are any thoughts around this from administrators or? Nothing at this point. If something comes up, please bring it up as we go along. I want to be mindful about the time too, since we still have Carla and Brooke as well. So Jim, I think at this point we just move on because we have more discussion around all of that. Something might emerge.
Thank you so very much for leading that conversation. Very, very much. And we're going to turn to Carla from Southern Oregon ESD, and then Brooke will be following up.
Hi, I'm Carla Clark from the Southern Oregon ESD. And first of all, I just want to thank you all for being willing to pilot the work that we're doing right now. This is huge. And I just want to share just a little bit. When I was in school and before I graduated high school and went on to go pursue my really crazy career path that I've had so far, back then everybody was going to college. We had all applied for different colleges. People that were smarter than I was and were busy applying for scholarships and making plans sooner than I was, were already on a different path. And I knew I wanted to go to college, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a lot of interests. There wasn't a test like this when I was in school. However, because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grow up, I was not about to just go enter college and spend a bunch of money that I didn't have, not knowing what I wanted to do. So I joined the Air Force. And when I joined the Air Force, they did an aptitude test. They do the ASVAB test. And so the ASVAB test did help narrow in my focus a little bit because they test you in your skills of mechanics, electronics, a general category, and administrative category. And it helps to narrow down for yourself and for the military what you're going to do when you grow up, or at least for the military. And I think about that because that did help narrow down what I did for the military. It then helped narrow down my education path that I've had so far and other things that I've done so far until today. What if I had had that test when I was in 7th or 8th grade? What if I could have not stressed about, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with my life? And I wouldn't ever turn anybody down from, if they want to go join the military, I think it's a great option. And there's lots to be had in that arena. But why not have some answers sooner? And so with that, how many of you, would you just do a show of hands and show me if you have taken the sample testing that you've done so far, the snapshot, if you did a sample of what your middle schoolers are going to do. You can either raise your virtual hand or show me your hand. Hold it up for just a moment because I'm scrolling. There's a lot of you today. All right, thank you. Thank you for doing that. If you haven't taken it yet, I really highly encourage it because some of the conversation we're having so far, and hopefully you're inspired if you haven't taken it so far with seeing what the presentation that Amy shared with us today and the talk with Regina so far and the rest of what we're going to talk about. It is really important that you take a little over an hour probably total and take the assessment and see what you experience so that you can know even more fully how you're going to share and relate to your students prior to taking their assessment, during, and after. Can you go to the next slide, please, Jim? Those of you that have taken the test, can you please share verbally, if you would? If you, for some reason, can't share verbally, go ahead and put it in the chat, but I would love to hear from you directly. What was your reaction during the assessment prior to getting your results?
So if I may, I'm Christy Creed, the principal at Henley Middle School, and I took the test and there was some of it that I was so frustrated with, and it was the spatial one. It's like, I don't know. So I just started it's like, what is this? And then it says you can't hold the paper. So here I was holding paper and I still couldn't figure it out. It's like, this is ridiculous. This is not me. So, but when I got my results, it was spot on. And I was shocked. It was spot on. It was to a T. It said I should be a counselor. Of course, I have a master's in counseling, and I mean, it was spot on, and I was so impressed with it. It was really good information, and had I had that prior to, this is my second career, things might have been a little bit different. I don't know. The experience that I had prior to me being an administrator has certainly helped me to be the administrator that I am. But boy, I was flabbergasted by how spot on it was. I actually took it home and shared it with my husband and said, look at this, because it was so good. So it was fun. I enjoyed it, except
Thank
for
you,
the
Christine.
spatial part of it.
Thanks for toughing that out, because there were, yeah, I love hearing that you were frustrated during parts of it and you're going, what the heck is this? But I love
And I
knowing
was
that you
cheating,
finished it.
and I was cheating as bad as I could, and I still got it wrong.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, who else?
So I had probably the same issues that Christy had, but probably the opposite. So it was during the spatial stuff, I was like, yeah, I could do this stuff all day. And then during the language portions, the time could not run out fast enough. And, you know, and that didn't surprise me at all. And so when I got the results, it was pretty, like she said, spot on what kind of I already knew. But definitely some of it was fun and easy, and other parts were definitely frustrating.
Thanks, Scott. Who else?
I'll go ahead and share. Carla, this is Brian. So I'll back up what the other Scott and Christine have said, is that it was pretty spot on. Though I was very surprised at some of the careers that they had suggested. Pig farming wasn't amongst them, but politician was, which was very interesting. And I started wondering about, you know, at 7th or 8th grade, I might not have had the aptitudes that I tested with, obviously, that I have today. And so as a reflection of my aptitudes today, it seems very reflective of what I am today and who I am today. So that led me to think, well, gosh, there's obviously growth, right? So I wasn't, you know, number one, it's 7th, 8th grade, I wouldn't have been given politician or instructional coordinator, which was second. And so the possibility of growth that's been showed by the test, I think is something that's really exciting to me. And I think that might be very informative to students.
Thank you, Brian. And I see your notes too, Debbie. Frustrating, but in the end, putting you on a path that maybe you wouldn't have, that you didn't take, but you considered it. So that's interesting. Let's go on to the next slide really quick. I don't want to take too long here. Okay, those of you, and some of this was answered. So if you haven't shared out yet and you would like to also share out since getting your results, if you haven't answered something like that, I would love to hear more. So you took the test and maybe you were frustrated or maybe it was fun, but now you have your results. I want to hear from you a little bit more, if you haven't shared yet, what your reaction was after getting your results.
I always love to share that I got 12, I took the high school one, it said 12 recommended careers. And in 32 years, I have had professional paychecks in 9 of the 12 careers that it said I should go into.
Awesome. Who else? All right, I see some really great Zoom faces, but what else? Jesse always picks on me for my resting Zoom face.
Carla, I wanted to add a comment. I think I shared this on Saturday at our meeting as well, but I really like what Brian shared, that you know, what his results were today accurately reflect who he is today and not who his 7th or 8th grade self was. Brian, I'm guessing you had more hair in 7th or 8th grade too, so maybe there's a difference there. But the other thing that I would say is I love that like a snapshot, a point in time thought. And so thinking about, you know, as Jim said, he has 9 of 12 career areas he's received or earned professional paychecks. And I wonder if we could go back to Jim's, you know, 9th or 10th grade self and think about, had he taken that assessment at 7th or 8th grade, what would the difference look like, right? Because we all change in our aptitudes and our interests throughout our lives, whether it's being introduced to something new or having new experiences. And I think it would be cool, or it will be cool in 5 years to think about the students that we're trying to positively impact today and how those results will change and what the ultimate, you know, goal line or whatever will be for those students as they continue to engage in education.
Love it, Brooke. Thank you. Any other reactions to your
Carla,
results? Otherwise, we can, or who else was trying to talk?
It's Beth. I just wanted to add something that Amy and that we've had in discussions in past sessions was around what the information students get around themselves for the socio-emotional learning, or what we learned about ourselves, socio-emotional learning and professional skills. I think that as students are hearing these and learning what skills that they have these strengths in, is going to be so great to connect in across content areas, besides, like, in addition to the bonus of learning about career fields that they potentially could be really great in. So I love, like, the socio-emotional learning. It's, you know, all about these strengths that students can bring and the professional skills. So that's another thing that was kind of fun to learn when I was taking it, and what students will get out of it.
Thank you, Beth. Let's go on to our last question here for this section. Knowing how you felt before and after the assessment, what do you think is important for your students to know in preparation for the assessment? So think about what you felt before and after, but also thinking about the conversations we've had so far today and what you heard from Amy Bradley about what kind of tools and offerings you can have and things to be thinking about before presenting to the kids. Knowing all of that, what is standing out to you that seems really critical to be able to share with your students before they take the assessment? And yes, thanks, Brian. You can put it in the chat, or I would like you to say it out loud too. Anybody else persist with measurements when they persist when the measurement gets difficult? What else?
For me, Carla, definitely the timing. That's an issue. If there's like an area, like several shared now, where they, with the folding or whatever activity it is, it's timed and you might not be able to finish it. You might not get through it. So you have to really pace yourself. And I think the more kids know about it, the better.
I think it's going to be really important too, to give them, when you mentioned timing, Regina, to don't expect them to, and Amy talked about this too, but don't expect them to do it all in one sitting. Break it up at least into 2 sittings, if not more, allowing them to take it at home possibly. I just think I did it all in one sitting. And that might have been a mistake. It definitely didn't make it easier on me. I can tell you that by the end of it, I was like, oh my word, get over with this. And I probably didn't get an accurate result on my interest base, because my interest, that was the last section that we took. And I was so over sitting in front of a computer screen at that point that I did just click buttons for my interest. And we don't want to. Yeah.
Sorry, Carla, it's Morgan. Hope
Yep.
you can hear me okay. Yes, I have not taken it yet, and I do look forward to it. But when I think about kids this age, and you know, they always want to get tests right.
Right.
And to fully inform them ahead of time that this is not a right answer, this isn't a scored answer, this is really an interest survey, and that it's okay to be frustrated. And to, you know, as long as kids are pretty good, as long as they know ahead of time that yes, you got to be frustrated, but it's a good frustration, and that's okay to have. So those are just kind of my thoughts on that.
Oh, I think you're 100% right on. I don't think you could have said it better. I think absolutely. They need to know that this isn't about getting it right. That this isn't a pass or a fail. This is simply the tool is going to give us information, and they're not going to be right or wrong. It just is. Any other last thoughts about important things that you want your kids to know before you start?
I think really the fact what Morgan just said, if you take the test and you share, I had my own frustrations as an educator or as an administrator. I took that test, and share your frustrations after they took the test, and then you can have a fun conversation around that. Actually, I think it leads to a great conversation about this whole test.
I think so too. And then I guess before we pass this on to Brooke, I'm just thinking back to Regina's section just a little bit with the deficit thinking. And what are we doing to avoid that deficit thinking? And part of what I think about is the conversations that we have with our students before they take the test, maybe giving them time to share and talk, but making space for them to talk about, you know, prior to having this assessment, asking those questions like Adam, you know, mentioned, like, you know, what do you want to do when you grow up? Finding out what their families have done, finding out who their mentors are, what do their role models do, what do their role models see in them, and then not placing any judgment, not making comment or furthering any thought process in that regard, but kind of letting them sit with that so that they can then take the test and then follow up and say, now, what do you notice? What do you think now? What would you like to do given the information that you've got now? And then we could talk quite a bit more about that later, but I think having those conversations and letting them see the possibilities is just another way that we can show them that they can go do anything they want to do. All right, Brooke, off to you. Thank you, everybody.
I'm going to interrupt really quick. Carla, thank you so much. I see some hands clapping there. So Regina, Carla, thank you. We're going to move on to Brooke. And as we do, I want to just a little follow up with Carla's comment about, let us not think about this in isolation. Let us work as a collective group together, a network of change and collaborators. So with that in mind, I think this really plays into what Brooke is going to share with us next in continuing the conversation about equity and partnership.
Thank you, Jim and Carla. I appreciate being a part of this. My name is Brooke Rich. I'm the Director of CTE and STEM at the High Desert ESD, and I serve as the CTE Regional Coordinator for the central portion of the state. Jim, if you could go to the next slide. There we go. It's so good to see so many of you on the call today and catch up with a few of you that I haven't worked with in a few years. Shout out to Henley and Adam Randall. Good to see you on the call today. So I want you to just take a look at the slide that's up on the screen right now. Thinking about interest versus aptitude versus a combination of those. When my team and I were kind of brainstorming this, we came up with a few questions that we wanted you to reflect on. And similarly to Carla and Regina, we're going to open it up and allow you to kind of answer these on your own. But thinking about these three, interest, aptitude, or a combination of the two, how do you define each of these? And how do we use various assessments with our students? So I'll let that one sit with you for a minute. Again, you're welcome to verbally answer or place your answers in the chat. Okay, so we've had a minute. I'm terrible with wait time, so if you're still thinking, it's okay. I was thinking about Carla's story doing the ASVAB when she was signing up to or enlisting in the Air Force, and I reflected on my experience taking Oregon CIS and how not great that was, because I felt like I totally gamed the system. So I could, be like, ha, see, I did it. I told you this is what I wanted to do when I graduated from high school, and I have the test scores to show that. And I think that for me, there's a big difference between interest and aptitude. In that aptitude, you're really identifying a student's strengths and not just what they may be interested in. And I hope that maybe is a similar answer that you had. And I also wonder about the combination of the two, right? Because I think one of the things that we've been working with in our region, and I know many of you are doing something similar, is really thinking about a student's passion and helping define that passion. So we can't make $1 million or necessarily support ourselves on passion alone, but identifying what our aptitudes are and what our interests are and where those intersect, and where we can identify a passion or a career that's going to be a place that we can be passionate about. So I guess if I think back to my 7th or 8th grade self, first of all, terrible visual, because I had the big bangs and crazy curly hair going on. It was a mess. But anyway, I think about one of the things that I really like to do is help people, whether it was helping a friend of mine in a class that needed help with a math problem or whatever it might be. And those of you who've worked with me on math, please don't chuckle at my math skills, because in 7th and 8th grade, they were really pretty strong. But also, even a student that might be new to the school and doesn't know where do they go. And I liked to help people. And so thinking about my career trajectory now, 30 plus years later, where am I? I'm in a field that helps people, right? And not to the same, maybe a little bit more in depth or a little bit more targeted than it was 35 years ago, but still, that's, as teachers, we want to help people. We want to better their lives. We want to, make a positive impact on students. So now we look at the second question here, that says, what does intentional career exploration look like in your building, or how could it look? So again, reflecting for me, thinking about some of the middle schools that I work with, is there really intentional career exploration? And this one, I'm actually going to wait for you all, someone to answer or share what they think career exploration looks like in the buildings in which they serve or other buildings within their area.
Adam, we need to hear from you.
Sorry, which part, Carla?
On the slide, Brooke's second question, what does intentional career exploration look like in your building, or how could it look? And I guess really I'm asking you to share with us your vision with Henley Middle School and what your goals are for including the 8th graders as they're getting ready this spring to pick out classes for next year.
Awesome. I feel like I've met Christy Creed, our middle school principal. I haven't met her in person yet. She's probably 250 yards away from me right now, but we just haven't actually had a chance to have the meeting. All these things coming up with our kids coming back on the 11th. Right now, we have a class called Senior Seminar that's a required class, and all seniors have to take it. And there's some really, really brief exploration in that class that I can't speak to. I just know it's brief, and it feels like if you take that class second semester of your senior year, kind of missing the boat here as far as you don't even have any choices left as far as what classes or what electives or what CTE classes to take. And so we're trying to start much earlier. And what the middle school and us would like to do is have and I don't know what it looks like this year. It's probably going to have to be videos. Christy just listened to me while we're kind of presenting it to everyone, because we can have a little meeting on our own right here while everyone else is listening. But in person is not going to work this year. In the future, what we'd like to do with our middle school about 200 yards away is walk the entire 8th grade class over to our campus, have a little 15-minute assembly in the gym, kind of talking about our CT programs, what the day is going to look like, and then basically turn the school into 16 different stations, much like if you were at a basketball camp or a baseball camp, and have the kids rotate through the stations throughout the entire day. And then head back to the gym for a little closing assembly, and then hopefully the next week or the week after would be forecasting as far as those kids scheduling their classes for their freshman year at Henley High School. Now, before all that, our hope is that they can take and analyze the youth science test, so not only discover what their interests and their aptitudes are, but then see what we offer here at Henley. And we have enough time on our schedule, and we're lucky that most of our kids do fairly well in school and don't need to remediate a ton, where the kids aren't just limited to one CTE pathway. They can take classes from 2 or 3 or even more pathways while they're here. And so that's the hope. And if we can't do it in person this year because of COVID, we have some ex-students who are kind of bumming around town, and they have their own video production company. And we're hopefully going to use some Measure 98 money or some Perkins money to basically pay these young men to produce 5 to 7 minute promotional videos for each one of our CTE programs, and at least get that in front of the 8th graders somehow, somewhere where that normal in-person event would take place. So that's the hope. It's an interesting year to try to start, but there's no better time than now. And that would be quite a bit of an improvement on our seniors just taking senior seminar, and perhaps even waiting until their second semester of their senior year, when it's really kind of too late to do some exploring. At least it doesn't cost money like other people have brought up earlier.
Thanks, Adam. I appreciate you sharing that. And I know that we've done, a lot of the similar things, especially when you were at Bentai, a lot of the similar things in our region. I think the other thing I was thinking about, and I'm going to keep moving, but if you have additional answers, feel free to throw those in the chat, is beyond kind of those one and done, or I know that it's a one and planning, but what other career exploration opportunities are there? I'm going to share one here in just a couple of minutes, but go ahead and think about that and throw your answers in the chat. The next 2 questions I want you to think about is, what kind of intentional connections are you making, or could you make with your secondary partner schools? So as Adam shared, connecting those high school CTE programs to your 7th and 8th grade students and thinking about forecasting. Okay. And also, what connections could you make or have you made with business and industry partners? And I'd like to share with you, and think about those, answer them in the chat or verbally answer them. But I also want to share kind of a success story in our region. And I'm going to keep rolling with this because we are pretty short on time, and I want to make sure we have time to finish up the rest of the presentation. But One of the schools that we serve is small compared to many of your areas, but Crook County School District has been really instrumental in growing their CTE programs in the last few years. They have a superintendent who's been there for a few years, and this has been kind of a focal point for her, kind of her driving force as she thinks about priorities in the school district. And so what she has thought about with career exploration, because we have done the middle school CTE day, similar to what Adam shared, but really making intentional career exploration. So giving students multiple opportunities throughout their time in middle school to be involved in some type of hands-on career exploration activity. So they purchased Paxton Patterson College and Career Ready Lab and put that in the middle school, which all 7th and 8th graders will participate in. And that was implemented over the summer. So those students are working hands-on right now during limited in-person. And then, you know, like the rest of us, looking forward to having students back in the next few weeks. But the idea there is that all the modules that are within that lab system are tied to CTE programs of study at the high school level. And you have to understand that Crook County has grown programs that are extremely diverse, but also are related to industries within their community, which kind of ties into that last question, is what connections have you made with industry? So there was actually a community industry survey that was taken in Crook County to identify where were there some, you know, what were the strengths that they already had, and where were some weaknesses or some places that they could become stronger. And so they've identified areas like computer science and IT, and are building a computer science program with robotics and programming and all kinds of activities for students, also strengthening the engineering program, and construction came out as another. So they have built a full construction program, which right now during COVID is a really scary undertaking, and they've just gone for it. So they have a new construction teacher that will be starting in the next few weeks too. So really thinking about and leveraging those partnerships. Having taught in a classroom, you know, it makes it, sometimes it's kind of scary to think about, how do I connect with my industry partners? Those of us, I think, that come to the table with some industry background, who maybe worked in an industry prior to coming into teaching, it might feel a little easier to reach out to our industry partners. But I know for a lot of education folks, it's hard to make that tie. And so thinking about how can you engage those folks that are outside your normal circle to really engage, draw students into whatever industry that they're working in, and also draw that industry into the school. I think sometimes we think about what can the industry partner offer us, instead of thinking about what can we offer our industry partners. And we have to remember that their time is valuable. They're you know, depending on the community that you're in, it might be a really small mom and pop shop that really employs only a few people. So how can we give back to those industry partners as well? So it is a two-way street. So I love some of the comments in the chat. I'm going to call out on some of those. So we have the SOCTE Trades Fair, Oregon Connections, STEM Tathlon, or Southern Oregon Skills. Salem Kaiser has implemented Paxton Patterson as well. Engineering program is building a mobile STEM trailer. That's out of Henley. We're going to use YouScience reports to create additional business or industry partners in career areas where we're lacking partnerships, which I love. And I think about our partnership with East Cascade Works, our Workforce Investment Board, and how we will engage them through the YouScience module as well. And then also our middle school and our elementary school are 100 to 200 yards from our school, and we plan to invite younger students to walk over and play in the facilities and get some hands-on experience so they can really see what those CTE programs look like, which I love that idea as well. When you're on a small campus like that, where all of your schools are within walking distance, it's really easy to integrate some of those cross-grade activities and really engage a bigger group of students. So as we move into the YouScience work, and as you start to work with your students and roll this out with your staff, I would encourage you to think about what other connections can be made, or even reach out to those of us that are project coordinators to just say, hey, have you guys tried something in your region? We were thinking about doing you know, a trades fair, or we were thinking about doing this. Does anybody have any experience with that? I think one of the beauties of our work as educators is that, you know, although we span a huge geographic area, we're a pretty tight-knit group of folks who are really looking at how we can leverage our partnerships, our friendships, the hard work that we have in order to provide additional opportunities for students. So I think that's the end of my time, unless anybody has additional comments to share. Okay, pass it on to you, Jim.
Hey, fantastic. Brooke, thank you so much. Thank you again, Regina, Carla, and Brooke for leading that conversation. And we've had some requests already in private chat and also after the first two organization gatherings to take this down the road further, to have deeper conversations about equity. So as these processes continue to develop, we'll reach out as a group of ODE and project coordinators to offer that opportunity to dig back into this. Thank you so much for this rich and robust conversation. Beth, would you address really quickly, maybe going back into the Padlet and refining their thoughts around the vision?
Yep, absolutely. Yes, so we want you to go back to the Padlet in that first column. And when we originally talked about what would it sound like, feel like for this pilot project, what would it be like for students if they got what they needed from this pilot project? If things have changed for you or you've developed over this discussion, we'd love for you to add to that. And it's really fun and exciting for us to hear from you all of what you're thinking and planning. And we're so excited that this is actually going to be an opportunity as we move forward to network with each other and learn from each other. So it's a professional learning network that we're going to build upon. So it's really great for you to share. So thank you so much for adding that. So go ahead and add your thoughts in there. You know, we've heard a bit about why it's important to consider assessment results and how they should be used effectively in career exploration and decision making. You know, a good approach, you know, as we talked about earlier, is for us to, a good approach is for us to take is knowing that the assessment results are one data point out of many data points that can be collected over time. And I think Brooke kind of talked briefly about that. But, you know, that these are going to be helping students inform them of opportunities in their educational planning, their career exploration, and life choices. It's also going to be important for us to keep in mind around the ethical, racial, cultural, and varying learning abilities that can lead to differences in how the assessment questions are interpreted, how students respond to the questions, and then also how they interpret the results. So interpretation can vary, you know, even within groups. So in knowing this, it's really important for us to address each student as an individual rather than as a homogeneous group. So just something to think about as we move forward. And lastly, what was mentioned by Lauren is, you know, we have a responsibility as educators, mentors, coaches, counselors, and guides in their lives. And, you know, what we believe, what we say, how we say it, and what we do can directly or indirectly impact a student's educational and career journey. So that's why this is an opportunity for us to foster confidence and elevate their strengths. And also, as we move forward with this pilot project, to consider how we can build on the information that students learn about themselves to help them grow and develop that confidence and ability to become whatever their future self is. So we're at the end of the equity, accessibility, and data discussion. And as you go back to enter in your thoughts, you know, we'd like to look over those. And then we're going to be moving into the open learning. So I'm going to hand it over to Jim as he moves into that part.
Okay, so I have a former student who is now an F-35 fighter pilot. So the next 10 minutes are going to be like a trip with that young man from Vermont to Minnesota. The Oregon Open Learning Hub is a huge investment on the part of ODE to create equitable access for materials and lessons and supports for our students, our educators, and families across the state. I'm going to ask Beth to put into the chat the link to the Oregon Open Learning Hub. I'm going to exit. So if you got your hands on your keyboard and your mouse, we're going to do this together really quick. And we are going to go to the Oregon Open Learning Hub. The group is Open Educational Resources. That's the big library, the National Library. And hubs are state-run and organizational-run collections of support and information. So you should see this page if you've done this link on your own device, and you'll see in the upper right corner a sign in and register. If you've never been into this format before, it takes 30 seconds, boom, done. And so as you consider doing that, I am going to sign in. You'll get that create an account side and do a registration. And I'm going to give people 30 seconds of quiet time to start logging in. I'm going to just scroll down the page as folks are doing that. You also can just go to the site and scroll along with me. If you sign in, it means you can start signing up for groups and you can start signing up for content areas. we are going to house all of our collective resources in this format, as well as a Google file folder system that you will link through your project coordinator. So each region is going to have their own file folder system, and we will also have this work here that we can share on Oregon Open Learning. As you get to the bottom on the groups, education partners and practices. So if you click on the education partners and practices, we'll scroll a little bit further down. We have our own group, Oregon Middle School Career Exploration. So for these next 18 months, we will have this place to plant our lesson plans and resources with one another. There's also a blog format within here where we can start coordinating and speaking with one another. This is temporary. In the next week, by Thursday, actually, you'll see quite a bit of content added into here, and the file folders will be properly labeled and populated. We want to present you with some lesson plans you can have for before the lesson, during the lesson, and after the assessment, where you can start those communications. The one item that is in already is a lesson plan template. So if you're building original content, this is a resource to help folks contribute into the Oregon Open Learning. Now, it's a bit of a process. It's not too terribly difficult, but to put materials into Oregon Open Learning, for these first 6 months, we at ODE and the project coordinators are working together that we will help you get these materials up and into this format. So what we've done is provided a Word document, just a walkthrough titling lessons, summaries, and again, this is as you're creating materials at your own site or in your own region, choosing your grade levels. These are click and drop items, and part of this is about being open and free access. There are different types of open and free access licenses. If you don't know, you can click on that. We are going to provide tutorials. We are going to provide webinars. We're going to provide lots of opportunity to support all of this learning. Again, this is the really fast flyby. We're approaching Illinois right now. Who authored the lesson, submitted by, objectives you're seeking to attain, standards. This is going to look familiar for a lot of lesson plan building. Putting in your resource links, and then a lesson overview. So here's where your content comes in on how to run the lesson. If you have an educator, a counselor, a career coach that already has a lesson in place, and they just want to get this to us, like here's something we already do, all you have to do is just drop all that information into during the lesson, send it to us, and we will help format it into Oregon Open Learning. That was a really fast flyby on the lesson plan template and on the resources that are going to be housed in Oregon Open Learning. There will be a lot more learning around this to come. Again, we will host some gatherings, and we will also record a bunch of tutorials and provide you with resources to support all that learning as we all progress together. I'm going to stop really quick for any questions in the chat and anything that anybody wants to ask out loud. And I do get bonus points if you sign up today. That's right. So if you register and sign up to join that group, and you're going to find a lot of content areas that you may want to also look at. Thank you, Morgan, for laughing. I appreciate that. A lot of content areas you may want to join, and other partnerships and other education partners you want to connect with. Yes, Jamie, we need a picture on that group. So here people can start thinking, what do we want to have our icon image be? Absolutely. Thank you. She just called me out. Okay, here we go. That's a yeah, send a picture in. Click like and subscribe. Thank you, Brian. Okay, so that's a really fast snapshot of Oregon Open Learning and the lesson plan template. What do I need to cover? I think, oh, we are so very close to the end, everybody.
Can I just say something really quick?
Please do.
I want to emphasize that yes, there are lessons available through YouScience, but we know that as you start into this work and you get ready to prepare your students and start teaching what you're going to teach as you walk through this process, that you're going to come up with better, meatier, more robust information that you are not going to be able to contain yourself. You're going to want to share it. So as you discover that, we want you to plug this into these lesson plans and share.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Again, these 2 hours today is really a broad overview, a chance to begin the conversation, and we'll just keep supporting you in all of this effort. Thank you, Carla. So we're at the end at the recap. We've talked about our collective purpose and outcomes. We've identified the centering of equity and access in our conversations and actions, and how to use some data, and how to use the YouScience platform and OOL, OER platforms, just little touch points to begin the conversation. So you are going to get a follow-up email. Everybody that's on this call today and anybody that was in our first and second gatherings, there will be a follow-up email to you specifically. What will you get? the YouScience readiness form. So your school ambassadors, if you're ready to start moving ahead, work with your project coordinators. There is a pup in Brooke's camera. That's why everyone's so distracted. There we go. The school ambassadors can start turning in your readiness form. That'll give you administrative access to the YouScience platform in your building. We'll have a link to the snapshot video, which is hugely helpful in just getting a basic understanding of how snapshot can be used with your students. There are links to walkthrough activities. Again, that's that whole lesson plan conversation that we have and will continue to have. A link to join Oregon Open Learning and to join the middle school career exploration group. Links to research and validity. So if you have deeper conversations you want to have in your building or across systems, that will be available. PDF of today's PowerPoint, if you want to grab any of that to begin building your own work. There's another dog in Brooke's camera leaping out of the chroma key. The PowerPoint, Beth and I will be offering a weekly office hour to support this work. One or both of us will be available for an hour once a week where you can drop in anybody in this whole pilot project for these first 6 months, and then we'll break that down into bi-weekly and once a month as we progress over into next year. But we'll have some very intentional availability for you to have access, and the links to the Career Connected Learning listservs. You can get more information about the whole span of what's happening with Career Connected Learning from elementary through post-secondary. Links to Oregon Equity Lens, the Oregon Equity Stance to help guide conversations, Lauren's story, and answers to questions that have been generated today and in the previous gatherings. That, actually, we got to Minnesota a lot faster than I thought. That was a 10-minute flyby. We did it in 5.5, so we must have been flying at 2 Mach. Chance now to answer any questions you might have before we say goodbye to everyone. Turn your mic on or turn your camera on, throw something in the chat. Call it out loud. Yes, Brian, agree. Thank you so much for joining us today. A huge thanks to our partners, Brooke and Regina and Carla, for leading that conversation, for all of our project coordinators, Gina, Debbie with us also. A lot of core coordinators are here. Brian, thank you. To all of our new partners, if this is the first time we've met you, really a joy to have this opportunity. Our ODE folks that are here, thank you so much for stepping in and joining us today. Oh, I see somebody I know there in the screen with Andrew. Hello, hello. So please do reach out to Beth and myself if there's anything we can do to support you. I'm going to pass it to my partner, Beth Wiggum, to say a final goodbye.
Yeah, Jim, just want to echo your appreciation for our partners facilitating and you all for being here. We really appreciate you, and we're excited about this this adventure with Career Exploration Pilot Project and what's to come. So we're here to support you, and please let us know if you need anything along the way. Thank you.
So we hope this is a journey we can all make together in helping our young people learn to tell their story. A huge thanks.
One more thing.
Oh,
Sorry.
Carla, go for it. Go for it.
Yes, and I don't think we talked about this, but we had during our first, we've done 3 sessions so far, 3 training sessions, and
Correct.
You all are the last one, the third one. It was hands down the best one I think we've had so far. But part of that was because on the first one that we did, we tried to cram a whole lot of extra information in there for you, and we went through a great big whirlwind of a walkthrough of how to do the nuts and bolts and walk through the back end side on the admin portion. So you're going to get, and we skipped that today. And we skipped that for our second training because we're going to be inviting you to another session if you would like to be walked through personally how to give your admin access, log your students in, and have all that back end access. So there's going to be another option, another opportunity coming soon that if you want that handheld opportunity, you can have it.
Yes, thank you. And a great way to think about that is 1 or 2 persons at your school site that are going to be tech savvy and be able to get in, do the setup, set up the folders with the student populations, and then also be able to help train your staff that are going to be engaged in providing the assessments and examinations and exercises for your students. Thank you, Carla, for catching that. So those will be offered again, and we will record those and make all those available to everyone. So, okay. On behalf of Oregon Department of Education, all your project coordinators from the 5 participating regions, a huge thank you. We hope many of you are wrapping up your first semester, that it's a happy, healthy, and safe wrap up, and that as we kick off the next semester and move into spring, the same happens for everyone. Stay happy, stay healthy. Let us know what we can do to help you out. Going to say goodbye to everyone. We'll stay on for just a few more minutes if anybody wants to ask private questions. Thank you for joining us today.